When I was younger, I played baseball, played football, but I was a little guy, and everybody was always bigger than me, so I had a hard time to compete with people. Well, one thing I did notice, whenever we got little scraps with each other, I would always end up wrestling someone down to the ground and end up on top of them every time. So I knew I had something going on there. Well, when I was in 6th grade, my brother George, he says, "Would you like to go see a wrestling match?" And he explained it to me, and I thought, wow, that sounds cool. He says, "I got somebody I want you to meet there too." So I took him up on his invite. We went up to Fruitport High School, and I got to watch my first wrestling match. And my first thought was, I looked at it, I said, you know, that is something for me. I don't have them big guys I got to compete with anymore. Everybody's my size, and I think I could do pretty good at it. Well, afterwards, he introduced me to this guy named Doug Lee. I think he was like a state champion. But he kind of gave me some fine pointers on the sport, and I thought, well, this could be interesting.
As a freshman, I saw him in the halls in September. I said, that kid's going to be a wrestler. And I found out subsequently that I talked to him, and he said, he kept on saying, "I'm not so sure, Coach." And I later found out he played me because he knew that he wanted to be a wrestler, and he enjoyed putting me on the spot and making me guess whether he was going to come out or not.
And there was a guy from Catholic Central, Jim McCabe. He whooped on me my freshman year. I mean, they were close matches, but he whooped on me. Well, we were in I believe it was a tournament, and I beat him and took that tournament. And to me, that was the match that was a turnover for me. I thought, oh, I can do this. I can compete. I can beat these guys.
He was, you know, everybody was always trying to best Greg. Greg was good.
My freshman year, I could remember looking at everybody on the team, even George Webster. In my mind, I could beat any one of these guys. But once I got a hold of Greg Pressler, it never went that way. Greg tortured me and beat me and made me such a good wrestler.
I remember Greg as just being so quiet and shy until he got in the wrestling mat.
And on the mat, he was so businesslike. He had an eagle eye. You have to be a great championship wrestler, you have to have this great heart. It isn't enough to have, the guys that are strong are a dime a dozen. Even talent is a dime a dozen. But you have to combine that with that, it's corny, but the eye of the tiger. And that's what Greg had. When he stepped out on that mat, he went to war. That's what he was. And he was a leader.
I think he had a 15-19 record his first year. And from then on, it was all the way up.
He won a lot of tournaments in his junior year, state champ. He won a lot of tournaments in his senior year. He was probably the leader on the team, from what I remember. Very tough.
His senior year in the conference championship, he was up against a wrestler named Jim Struby, who was a good wrestler. He was a state qualifier from Fremont. But by that time, putting a good wrestler against Greg Pressler was the equivalent of feeding fish to a shark. He hit a magnificent move called the Japanese Whizzer, which earlier in his career he had used to take down the Japanese national champion. And he hit Struby, and he got his hip into it, and Struby went up and over, his legs went up and over, and the whole crowd just, it was like that. Everybody seeing it, and he went all the way over, and then Greg slid seamlessly into a headlock and got the pinfall, and everybody's whoa, whoa. And you just think, how good can somebody be? He was special.
Greg quickly took me under his wing and taught me how to wrestle. Greg was amazing. He made this grueling sport of wrestling look easy. His sit-out was second to none. I took many beatings from Greg, but it made me a better wrestler. The days we had a dual meet, all wrestlers would wear their letter sweaters to school that day. I will never forget seeing Greg walking down the hall with all those medals, click, 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 just walking down the hall. You could barely see the F on his sweater. He had so many medals. Right from the beginning, even to this day, Greg will always be my idol. Greg became the 1973 112-pound state champion of Michigan that year. Coach Al Shaw's very first state champion. Our team placed third in the state that season. The following year, Greg and I both qualified for the state meet. Greg took third in the state at 119 pounds that year and set the Fruitport High School record for the most wins. Greg influenced not only myself, but many young wrestlers who wanted to be just like him.
The one person I could not thank enough really is my dad. My dad was behind me 100%. And I tell you, the places he took me to wrestle, like freestyle tournaments in the summer. I mean, we would travel all over the place, and he never griped about it. I tell you, the best thing I'd really like to see is my dad sitting with his buddies, how he would talk about me. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for that, because he seemed very proud of me.
Well, Greg, there's nobody that deserves this honor more than you do. I think of all of the guys, the superstar things, the incredible things they did, and you stand out even from them. The example that you led and the things that you did for Fruitport out there, as well as you are so deserving of this. And we're all rambling on about you, but we can't do you justice. Congratulations.
Are awesome! Go get him, Greg!
Ladies and gentlemen, 1973 state champion, Greg Pressler. Let's welcome him. Very proud of you.
Nice hair.
Kyle, I don't care what they say, you're not the shortest. Well, needless to say, I got me a nice suit coat sitting at home. And if you look at the bottom last paragraph in that brochure, I decided I was going to start assistant coaching for the middle school. Well, they had a meet tonight. It was a tournament. Of course, the coach told me, he said, yeah, it's usually done by 3:30, 4 o'clock. I said, no problem. I got plenty of time. Well, we ended up getting 4 guys in the finals, and we had 3 guys in the consolation finals. And they keep coming up to me, you're not leaving us, are you? So here I am stuck. So thank you to my lovely wife for bringing everything down, getting it set up, and getting everything taken care of. And I also had this nice speech, but I got some notes. First of all, I'd like to thank all the people that turned in nominations for the Hall of Fame. I'd like to thank those on the board for accepting my nominations. I'd like to thank all my coaches for their guidance and patience and training. I'd like to thank my fellow wrestlers and friends. I'd like to thank my family for support. Most of all, I'd really like to thank my dad. The time and effort he put into me, taking me all these freestyle tournaments during the summer. It's just, you don't realize it at the time, but when it's done, you go, wow. Free time. He took his free time to help me. And that meant a lot. I'd like to thank all of you for showing up tonight, too. when a friend, fellow wrestler of mine, found out about this, he'd give me a call. His name is Steve Hammond. He says, you know, Greg, I'd like to do your introductory speech. He says, because I know you will not give justice to your performances. And he is right about that. But then I got this little guy on my shoulder named Ken Ernie. He says, now, Greg, we're going to keep that speech 5-10 minutes, right? I said, well, I'll see what I can do. And then I knew if I had Steve talk, if any of you know Steve, there's no 5-10 minutes in his speeches. So I had to turn him down, but thank you anyway, Steve. And like the story said, you know, I did lie a little bit. I was in 7th grade when my brother took me to that wrestling match. But yeah, that was a time in my life where I realized there is something out there for a guy like me that was always the smallest, probably the lightest guy with any of my friends or competitors, you know, be it football or baseball. I had a career that I think, you know, speaks for itself in the brochure, so I don't really have to sit here and talk about all my accomplishments. What I'd like to do, of course, I'm going to try to keep this short for you guys. What I'd like to do is talk about basically what wrestling did for me. Now, when I started as a freshman, of course, they didn't have wrestling in the middle school. So I started as a freshman. And I knew I was going to, just right away, I fell in love with the sport. Well, after challenge matches, I ended up making the varsity team. I was the only freshman on the team. In fact, there were no sophomores on the team. So I'm on a team as a freshman with nothing but juniors and seniors. That in itself is intimidating. So I knew I had to pull my weight as best I could. But as my career went on, I kind of felt something growing inside me. I didn't quite figure out what it was. So as matches piled up, wins started piling up, I got a glimpse of what it might be. And what it ended up being was confidence. So throughout my career of wrestling, the confidence built really high. And for being a short guy and a tiny guy, that's a big factor in life. Well, what ended up being is that confidence that built up in me in wrestling ended up carrying me through into my life venture, so all the ups and downs in life I could handle head on. And I can't thank wrestling enough for that. So I ended up embracing life knowing that I had the confidence to take it on head on, just like I did in wrestling. So I said I was going to make it short because somebody's got to be the fall guy and make up for the time. So I would like to thank you all for showing up. Thank you very much.